Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. The Trouble with Tacos, written by Destroyer Tron Mark 8. Are you telling me, Ambassador Hill asked slowly, that you caused an intergalactic incident with your ass? Are you really surprised at that? Ambassador Honeypot gave him a naughty grin. She turned to display the part in question, meeting his eyes with parted lips and a come-hither stare. I mean, have you seen this thing? Her uniform was tight, perfectly outlining the posterior that could launch 1,000 ships. She wriggled in his direction. Ambassador Hill spared a moment to thank God his keen diplomatic instincts that he had been sitting down at his desk when she arrived. He'd been working with Miss Honeypot for 2 years now, and she'd noticed his attraction fairly early. She teased him mercilessly at every opportunity. Mr. Hill did his best to ignore it. If he secretly wished the woman's flirtatious banter was an indication of something deeper, he would never be so foolish as to admit it. She was a colleague, and he was a professional. Still, a man could dream. Vanessa Honeypot was a vision, and she knew it. Curly red hair, eyes like emerald fire, and a body so perfect he'd had her background investigated for genetic tampering. He'd found none, but he did learn that Honeypot wasn't her original lost name. She'd had it legally changed. Her English accent was an affectation as well, but it was one that worked for her. She had a voice that could melt tungsten. Ambassador Hill took a moment to center himself. It was important that he remained calm. Miss Honeypot might be all flirtatious bravado now, but 3 hours ago she'd been crying, terrified mess. Not that he blamed her. This isn't time for jokes, he chided. It took months to get the Grekt and the Hoth to agree to negotiate. Now both sides are threatening war. The Grekt and the Hoth were all members of the Greft species, but a schism in their government had caused a civil war that had gone on for nearly a century. Peace is such a fragile thing, Honeypot remarked. We both know the ceasefire wasn't going to last. The ceasefire is still in effect, Hill told her. They're threatening to go to war with us. Oh, Honeypot's cheerful facade crumbled for a moment, revealing genuine worry. What the hell happened down there? Ambassador Hill didn't really want to press the woman, but he'd needed to know. The extraction team gave me the initial report, but it didn't make a lot of sense. It was... Ambassador Honeypot's lips trembled for a moment, then she sighed. She looked down. It was Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday? Oh no! Ambassador Honeypot was easily the most beautiful, charming, and self-assured woman he'd had the pleasure to work with. But she had one major, glaring flaw. Gas. Her flatulence was legendary. Ambassador Hill didn't know what combination of gut bacteria was responsible, but he did know that the gassy honeypot was the raunchiest, most potent, most horrifying series of smells he had ever experienced. On their last assignment, the Valnian envoys had referred to her as Lafaloo Lalech. She'd been tickled pink when they told her it meant Mistress of the Flaming Hair. Ambassador hadn't had the heart to tell her what it really meant. Mistress of the Deadly Gases. Tell me you didn't, Ambassador Hill implored. We were in the lift, Honeypot explained. You know how both envoys insisted on going together. Neither side wants to be kept waiting, and God forbid they take separate elevators and one arrives before the other. So we were all crammed in together. And, you had to, Ambassador Hill trailed off. Please God, let this not be what he thought. I had tacos, Honeypot huffed. It was a crowded elevator. I didn't think they'd know it was me. But they did, Hill guessed. And they were offended. No, not exactly, Honeypot grimaced. When they smelled it, they sort of got excited. Excited? Hill's brow frowned. Yes, Honeypot flushed. She must still be pretty rattled if she was allowing herself to blush. They were just sniffing at first. But after a few seconds, she sighed. They all started tearing each other's clothes off. Ambassador Hill blinked. No, really, Honeypot insisted. They went mad. Everyone on the lift started pawing and grunting, and then Lord Regent grabbed me and I just, Her eyes watered for just a moment. I hit the panic button. The diplomatic corps took the safety of its ambassadors very seriously. When Ambassador Honeypot activated her panic button, a strike team was dispatched within seconds. In under a minute, they had forced their way into the elevator. They'd shot the Lord Regent of Hoth, as well as several members of both diplomatic envoys, and pulled the ambassador and her staff out. They'd used non-lethal stun pistols, thank God, but it was still a terrible mess. Ambassador Hill took a breath. Let me see if I have this straight. You farted in a cramped elevator, and it started an orgy? Yes. Then the Lord Regent of the Hoth tried to force himself on you. Honeypot breathed out through her nose and nodded. Yes. And then you hit the panic button, and the strike team busted in and, shot him. She looked down at the deck. Yes. Holy hell! Ambassador Hill sagged at his desk, rubbing his temples. He didn't get stress headaches, but he really felt like this time he should. I'm sorry, said Honeypot. I didn't mean for... It's not your fault, Hill cut her off. Hitting the panic button was the right thing to do. And how the hell does a fart cause an orgy? I don't know, Honeypot admitted. Pheromones? Do pheromones even come from there? I don't think so, said Hill. I guess that why is something for this science team to figure out. In the meantime, we need to find a way to fix this. Ambassador Hill continued to rub his temples. If we blow this treaty, we'll be lucky to get a job somewhere with paper hats and a friar. He didn't mention that losing their jobs was a secondary concern. The Valtrix Union was pressing the Alliance hard. Stopping a civil war and getting the Greft on their side could be the difference between victory and subjugation. Don't worry, Ambassador Honeypot said. I won't let you get sacked on my behalf. This is my mess. I'll take full responsibility. We both will, Ambassador Hill decided. I won't let you do it alone. You're too important to me. Either we'll work this out together, or we'll both find a place with paper hats. Ambassador Honeypot stared at him for a moment. She looked oddly vulnerable. I'm important to you. I didn't think you even liked me. Of course I like you. Hill spoke without thinking. I like you so much He stopped himself, but he knew that it was too late. Honeypot's eyes went wide. Hill panicked. He cleared his throat and said, I mean, you're a valued colleague. Vanessa Honeypot clicked the button on the inside of her wrist, activating her ocular implants. The implants were one of the secret weapons of the Alliance's diplomatic corps. They allowed the user to read biometrics and determine another being's emotional state. Using them on a fellow ambassador was a serious breach of etiquette, but Joe Hill was more concerned about what she'd find. Don't! He started to warn her off, but she'd already done it. Oh my God! Vanessa's stare changed to shock. She knew. 2 years of careful control, passing all his phrases, painstakingly modulating his body language, all thrown away for half a careless sentence. Joe cursed himself. Then he panicked. Then he wrestled with himself back under control. They were grown-ups, professionals. I wish you hadn't done that, he told her. I know this makes things awkward, but I'd like to think that we can still work together. You're an idiot, Vanessa smirked. Joe blinked. His words failed him. What? Joe, Vanessa chided. You are one of the most accomplished diplomats in the Corps, trained to read body language of over 100 alien species. And you can't figure out when a girl likes you. Ambassador Honeypot, Joe started. Vanessa, Honeypot insisted. Call me Vanessa, you big dumb lug. Okay, Vanessa, Joe swallowed. The thing is... He didn't know what he would have to say next. The office phone rang and interrupted his train of thought. Joe recognized the number and answered. Duchette, what do you have for me? Incoming transmission from Hoth, Ambassador. Shane Doucette reported. Now of all times. Joe shook himself. Getting the peace deal back on track was far more important than his own personal affairs. Patch him through. I have Ambassador Honeypot here as well. Doucette knew that already, but the reminder would ensure he warned the Hoth ambassador. Ambassador Hill quickly retrieved a spare chair and sat it next to his. Ambassador Honeypot sat, and Hill activated the view screen. Ambassador Oolong's stern visage filled the view screen. The Greft regarded his fellow ambassadors with the cold aloofness Ambassador Hill had come to expect. He ran 3 fingers across his forehead. "Greetings to you," he said stiffly. "Greetings to you, Ambassador," Ambassador Hill returned formally, mirroring the gesture. He was tempted to lead off with an apology, but decided to see what the Greft had to say first. "To what do I owe the pleasure of this call?" Ambassador Oolong's lips twisted before he forced himself back to emotionless formality. "I wish to inform you that the Lord Regent has recovered. He asked me to express his apologies for his behavior toward Ambassador Honeypot during the incident." The Greft pressed a thumb to the bridge of his nose. "Tell him I accept the apology." Honeypot was every inch of the assured diplomat. No trace of her earlier feelings could be seen. She placed her thumb on her nose as well, removed it, and then replaced it with her other thumb. "And offer one of my own. My emission was a neutral part of my species' digestive process. I had no idea that it would have that effect on him." "Indeed," intoned the Greft. "We thought that you had administered some form of drug at first, but our investigation has assured us that the emission was, in fact, natural. We believe that neither you nor we could have anticipated the effect it would have on the Greft biology." Ambassador Oolong pressed a thumb to his nose. "Your apology is accepted." "Does this mean that the Lord Regent is willing to reopen negotiations?" Ambassador Hill inquired. "Perhaps," allowed the Greft. "You might be interested to know how the Prince Regent and the Governess of Grecht were able to, find common ground during the incident. Neither party any longer objects to joining of houses." "That's excellent news," said Ambassador Hill. "Perhaps we can resume the talks tomorrow." "The next day would be preferable," the Greft intoned, "but yes, the peace talks can resume." "The day after tomorrow is," Ambassador Hill agreed. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" "There is one thing." Ambassador Oolong struggled to control his expression. "The Lord Regent has expressed interest in the ambassador's digestive emissions. He has requested some samples for, The Hearth Ambassador lost control, face contorting into a grimace. "Experimentation? We'll see what we can do," Ambassador Honeypot said judiciously. She ran 3 fingers down her cheek. "Strength and honor to you, Ambassador." Ambassador Hill didn't speak, but copied the gesture. "Strength and honor to you both," the Greft intoned. He ended the transmission. Joe let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "That went well." Vanessa nodded. "I suppose it did." "Vanessa!" She met his eyes. Joe stared back, stealing his courage. He was a war veteran and a member of the diplomatic corps. He could do this. "Would you like to, join me for dinner?" "No." Her voice was firm. "Oh?" Joe's shoulders sank. He should have known better. "I'm sorry if I—" "No," Vanessa cut him off. "Now that I've got you figured, I'm not giving you the chance to pull out." She stood. "I'm going back to my quarters, and you're coming with me." She pushed a button on the desk phone. "Giuseppe?" "Yes, Ambassador," the senior assistant answered. "Peace talks will resume the day after tomorrow. We're calling it a night." She clamped a hand over Joe's shoulders when she saw he was about to object. "In the morning, I'm going to need 5 jars with sealable lids and a burrito." "Yes, Ambassador." Vanessa gave Joe a considering look, then pressed the button again. "Make it 2 burritos." End of story. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, it's difficult to pronounce, Lord Arishikal, Dragzoon WRE, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.